In the dusty town of Willow Creek, a cowboy named Jake lived a life filled with hard work and adventure. He wore a well-worn hat that shaded his sun-kissed face and had boots that were caked with dirt from countless days riding under the open sky. Jake was known for his sharp eye and quick draw, but more importantly, he was a loyal friend. He often helped others in trouble, always ready to lend a hand. However, one fateful evening changed everything. While trying to help a struggling rancher protect his cattle from rustlers, Jake found himself in a life-threatening situation. The rustlers ambushed him, and before he knew it, they had tied him up and placed a rope around his neck. The world blurred as fear coursed through his veins like wildfire. His heart raced as he heard their laughter echoing in the night, mixing with the sounds of hooves galloping away into the distance. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, a lone rider appeared on the horizon. The townsfolk whispered tales of this gunslinger, an enigmatic figure skilled at drawing out trouble like pulling a trigger. As the moon rose high in the sky, casting silver light over the barn where Jake was held captive, he felt both terrified and hopeful. Would this mysterious gunslinger be brave enough to cut the rope? And would he be able to handle what came next? As tensions mounted in the dark, Jake's fate hung by a thread, quite literally. As the moonlight bathed Willow Creek in a silvery glow, the sound of hooves thundering against the hard-packed earth broke the eerie silence. Dust kicked up behind a lone rider as he approached the barn, and townsfolk paused to watch. The air was thick with anticipation, for they knew this wasn't just any traveler, this was the gunslinger they had heard stories about, his name whispered in both admiration and fear. His silhouette cut a striking figure against the night sky, his hat casting a shadow over his face. With every stride of his powerful horse, an aura of confidence surrounded him. The gunslinger was known far and wide for his unmatched skill with a six-shooter and his quick thinking in perilous situations. Tales of his bravery spread like wildfire across the frontier, and many believed he had an uncanny ability to appear just when hope was fading. As he reined in his horse near the barn, he surveyed the scene carefully. His eyes were sharp, scanning for any sign of danger while an unyielding calmness settled over him. Those who watched could see that he wasn't just here to ride into the sunset, he had come to confront whatever trouble lay ahead. With a steady hand resting on his holstered gun, he dismounted gracefully and stepped forward, each movement deliberate. The tension in the air grew thicker as whispers spread among the onlookers. Was this gunslinger bold enough to take on the rustlers? Or would he become another victim of their wickedness? In that moment, Jake's fate seemed intertwined with this enigmatic hero's arrival. As the gunslinger approached the barn, his heart raced with a mix of determination and caution. He could see Jake struggling against the rope, panic evident in his eyes. The situation was dire, and the rustlers could return at any moment. He had to make a choice, and it weighed heavily on him. Should he cut the rope and free Jake, risking both their lives if the rustlers were still nearby? The gunslinger knew that if he acted too quickly, they could be ambushed before they had a chance to escape. Yet, the cowboy's desperate situation tugged at his conscience. He had heard tales of Jake's bravery, he couldn't let a fellow cowboy perish on his watch. The moonlight glinted off his gun as he considered his options. If he chose not to act, Jake could suffocate or face a worse fate at the hands of the rustlers. But if he intervened, he might end up drawing attention to himself and putting them both in danger. Every second felt like an eternity, and he could hear the distant sound of hooves approaching. Time was running out. With a deep breath, he clenched his jaw and decided to trust his instincts. He would have to be quick and clever. Not only would he need to cut the rope, but he also had to ensure they had a plan for escape in case the rustlers returned. In that moment of decision, the gunslinger understood that bravery wasn't just about facing danger, it was about making the right choice when it mattered most. With determination set in his eyes, the gunslinger made his move. He approached Jake with swift, fluid steps, his hand gripping the handle of his knife tightly. Awareness of every sound in the night filled him as he crouched down beside the cowboy, who was struggling to breathe and frantically glancing around for any hint of danger. "Hold on, partner," the gunslinger whispered, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling around them. He could hear the distant clatter of hooves approaching. Time was not on their side. He swiftly unsheathed his knife and positioned it against the rope encircling Jake's neck. In one clean motion, he pressed down and sliced through the fibers. The rope fell away, and Jake gasped for fresh air, relief flooding through him as he clutched at his throat. The gunslinger stayed close, ensuring he was ready to act if danger arose again. "Get up," he urged Jake, who still looked dazed but understood they had no time to waste. As Jake scrambled to his feet, heart racing and senses heightened, they heard a rustling nearby. The rustlers were returning. The gunslinger glanced at Jake and made eye contact. There was an unspoken understanding between them that they had to escape together. In that moment of chaos, the gunslinger showcased not just bravery but quick thinking, a blend of skills necessary to navigate this life-or-death situation. They would have to work together if they wanted to outsmart their foes and survive the night in Willow Creek. Just as Jake stood, finally free from the rope, the sound of thunderous hooves echoed in the distance, sending a jolt of fear through both men. The gunslinger turned sharply, his instincts kicking in as he tightened his grip on his weapon. They both knew it could be the rustlers returning to reclaim their prey. However, as the noise grew louder and closer, it became clear that this was no ordinary band of outlaws. The shadows of several riders emerged, silhouetted against the moonlit sky. The gunslinger squinted, recognizing the familiar shape of the sheriff's hat atop one of the horses. It was the sheriff and his posse, galloping toward the barn with determination. The tension mounted as they encircled the structure, forming a barrier that trapped everyone inside. "Hold your fire," shouted the sheriff, his authoritative voice cutting through the night like a blade. "We've got it surrounded. You're not getting away this time." The sheriff's words hung heavy in the air, amplifying the sense of urgency. Jake's heart raced as he exchanged a glance with the gunslinger. They were caught between two forces, the rustlers who had threatened his life and the sheriff's posse who might not know they were allies now. The gunslinger lifted his chin, readying himself for whatever came next. As the sheriff's men dismounted and fanned out, tension crackled like electricity. Would they see Jake as a victim needing rescue or as a criminal tangled up in trouble? The stakes had just risen dramatically, and both men would have to think fast to navigate this precarious situation. Inside the barn, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Jake and the gunslinger exchanged glances, both acutely aware of the perilous situation they faced. Fear gripped Jake's heart as he recalled the moments leading up to his near demise. Now, he felt vulnerable yet invigorated by his newfound freedom. He could hear the rustlers' laughter echoing in his mind, but that was replaced by the overwhelming noise of hoofbeats and shouting just outside. The gunslinger stood with his back pressed against a wooden beam, his eyes narrowing as he listened intently to the movements of the sheriff's posse. Each creak of wood seemed louder than the last, amplifying their uncertainty. The moonlight peeked through cracks in the barn walls, casting eerie shadows that danced around them, adding to the sense of impending doom. Jake's breath quickened. "What do we do now?" he whispered, fear evident in his voice. The gunslinger took a moment to gather his thoughts. He had faced many threats before, but this was different. They were trapped between two dangerous forces. "Stay low and follow my lead," he replied, trying to mask his own apprehension with a calm demeanor. As they crouched together, adrenaline coursed through their veins and time seemed to stand still. Outside, voices grew louder, orders were barked out, and torches flickered ominously. They both understood that whatever happened next would define their fate. Would they emerge as heroes or become victims of circumstance? In that barn filled with memories and shadows, fear hung heavy in the air as they prepared for the storm about to break. The sheriff stepped forward, his authoritative voice booming as he shouted, "Gunslinger! Step out and show yourself." His eyes were sharp, scanning the barn for any sign of trouble. He didn't trust the gunslinger, a stranger in town, and he knew that chaos often followed wherever such men wandered. The gunslinger hesitated for a moment, weighing his options. He knew that revealing himself would put him in the spotlight, but hiding wouldn't help Jake. Taking a deep breath, he emerged from the shadows, hands raised to show he meant no harm. I'm not your enemy, Sheriff. I just freed this cowboy from a noose, he said, his voice steady but low, trying to avoid provoking the situation further. Free him? You think that means you're above the law? The sheriff's face twisted into a scowl. You've put yourself in quite the pickle, Gunslinger. I have a mind to take you both in for interrogation. You may be a hero to some, but to me, you're just another outlaw until proven otherwise. Jake felt a surge of panic at the sheriff's words. But I'm the victim here, he protested, stepping forward. The sheriff's glare shifted to him. And how do I know you're not part of this mess? You've been caught with the likes of rustlers before. Tension filled the air as the gunslinger and sheriff faced each other, each man unwilling to back down. Outside the barn, whispers from the posse grew louder as they prepared for whatever confrontation was about to unfold. In that charged moment, both Jake and the gunslinger realized they had to find common ground, or they risked falling into a trap laid by mistrust. The gunslinger recognized the crackling tension in the air and knew he had to act quickly to de-escalate the situation. With a calm and steady voice, he addressed the sheriff, I understand your concerns, Sheriff. I'm not here to cause trouble, I'm just trying to help a man in need. He took a step forward, lowering his hand slightly to show sincerity without appearing threatening. Look, I know we're strangers here, but Jake's life was in danger just moments ago. I can vouch for him, he's no rustler, the gunslinger continued, his eyes locking onto the sheriff's. Let's not paint him with the same brush as those who put him in that rope. We both want justice here. Jake watched as the gunslinger spoke, feeling a surge of hope mixed with anxiety. The sheriff's brow furrowed as he considered the gunslinger's words. What do you know about justice? He retorted, but there was a hint of doubt in his voice. More than you think, replied the gunslinger confidently. You've seen many outlaws come and go, you know I'm not one of them. If you let us walk out of here together, I'll help you bring those rustlers to justice. We can work together. The sheriff hesitated, glancing at Jake and then back at the gunslinger. The idea of an alliance began to take root in his mind. By presenting himself as a potential ally rather than a threat, the gunslinger managed to create an opening for compromise, a chance for both men to prove their intent and perhaps even find common ground amidst their precarious reality. As silence filled the barn once more, hope flickered faintly in the air like a candle in the night. As silence filled the barn, Jake stood at a crossroads, uncertainty swirling in his mind. He had just been freed, yet the situation around him was anything but safe. The gunslinger, who had risked his life to cut the rope, now stood as a potential ally against the very rustlers who had sought to end his life. But standing with him meant taking a stand against the sheriff's posse, a choice fraught with danger. Jake could feel the weight of everyone's gaze on him, both the gunslinger's steady eyes and the sheriff's piercing glare. He recalled how close he had come to death and how this stranger had offered him a second chance. But could he trust him? The sheriff wasn't just any lawman, he was known for upholding strict justice, and Jake feared that siding with the gunslinger might turn him into an outlaw in the eyes of the law. He glanced between them, a stark contrast of intentions. On one side was the gunslinger, embodying a sense of freedom and courage, on the other, the sheriff represented order and authority. What should I do? Jake thought to himself. Taking a deep breath, he realized that running away would only lead him back into darkness, the rustlers would come after him again. If he chose to fight alongside the gunslinger, they might just have a chance to put an end to this madness once and for all. With resolve building inside him, Jake stepped closer to the gunslinger. I'm with you, he declared firmly, ready to face whatever came next together. This was not just about survival, it was about reclaiming his life and asserting his strength in this tumultuous moment. The tension in the barn reached a boiling point as the sheriff's posse began closing in. Outside, voices shouted harsh commands, echoing off the wooden walls. Jake felt adrenaline coursing through him as he prepared for what would come next, knowing there was no turning back. The gunslinger, standing resolute beside him, scanned their surroundings with keen eyes and a fierce determination. Suddenly, the sheriff bellowed, "You too. "Come out with your hands up." The words hung in the air, heavy and ominous. While the sheriff demanded compliance, Jake felt a surge of instinctual defiance. "We can't leave now, they'll take us or worse," he murmured urgently to the gunslinger. As if on cue, chaos erupted outside when one of the rustlers rode into view, brandishing a weapon and yelling threats at the sheriff's men. In a split-second decision, the gunslinger turned to Jake, "We have to move now. There's no time to waste." Without hesitation, he propelled himself into action. He dashed toward the barn doors, ready to face whatever lay beyond. Jake followed closely behind, his heart racing with fear and anticipation. The moment they burst through the doors, bullets flew past them, dust rose as shots rang out. They ran toward their adversaries amidst shouts and chaos, every second counted. Jake could see both the sheriff's posse and rustlers confused by their sudden emergence. In this frenzied clash of loyalty and survival, choices had to be made quickly. Would they fight together against the rustlers while trying to earn the sheriff's trust? This fleeting moment would determine not just their fates but also who truly stood for justice in Willow Creek. The clash had begun, tension boiled over into an unpredictable storm of action, a fight for freedom and life itself. As bullets whizzed through the air, Jake and the gunslinger dove behind a nearby haystack for cover. The chaos of the fight unfolded around them, with shouts of both the sheriff's posse and the rustlers mixing in a cacophony of confusion. But amidst the gunfire, something unexpected happened. Jake noticed that the sheriff's men were not just shooting blindly, they were trying to form a protective barrier around him. With adrenaline pumping, Jake turned to the gunslinger, "We need to help them. They're not all bad." The gunslinger nodded in agreement, recognizing that this was their chance to turn the tide. "Let's create a distraction," he said, formulating a plan on the fly. In a daring move, Jake stood up from behind cover and shouted, "Sheriff! We're here to help. Let's take these rustlers down together." His voice rang out clearly over the noise, catching the attention of both the posse and their adversaries. The sheriff hesitated but then yelled back, "If you're on my side, then let's show these outlaws what we've got." With renewed determination, Jake and the gunslinger charged forward alongside the sheriff's men. The rustlers were caught off guard by this sudden alliance. As they fought together, trust began to build between Jake and the sheriff's posse. With coordinated fire and strategic maneuvers, they managed to drive back the rustlers until they surrendered one by one. When it was all over, Jake found himself standing shoulder to shoulder with both the gunslinger and the sheriff. In that moment of victory, tensions melted away. The sheriff extended his hand towards Jake, a gesture of newfound respect. "You've proven your worth today," he said. "Perhaps we can work together after all." The gunslinger smiled knowingly at Jake. Their daring choices had forged an unexpected alliance that would forever change Willow Creek. As the dust settled in Willow Creek, Jake, the gunslinger, and the sheriff stood together, a newfound camaraderie blossoming from the chaos they had faced. The sun began to rise, illuminating not just the town but also the changes within its people. This Wild West adventure had forged unlikely bonds that transcended previous mistrust. For Jake, the experience was transformative. He realized that courage wasn't just about facing down rustlers, it was also about making choices that might challenge his beliefs. Standing up for what was right meant risking everything but ultimately led him to reclaim his life and honor. He felt a sense of purpose igniting within him as he looked around at the townsfolk who had initially watched with fear. Now, they gathered in respect and gratitude. The gunslinger found himself reflecting on his actions as well. He had come to Willow Creek as an outsider but now felt a connection to the community. He recognized that through teamwork and shared goals, even the most dangerous situations could be turned into opportunities for growth and understanding. The sheriff, too, learned valuable lessons about trust and collaboration. His initial suspicion of the gunslinger melted away as he witnessed their bravery and commitment to justice. In uniting against common foes, he discovered that sometimes alliances could form in the unlikeliest of circumstances. In the aftermath of this confrontation, Willow Creek began to heal. With rustlers captured and justice served, hope returned to its streets. Together, Jake, the gunslinger, and the sheriff looked forward to building a brighter future, one forged from bravery, respect, and a deep understanding that true strength lies in unity.